Mr. Massey, Mr. Verschoren. Mr. Perkins, floor is yours.
Ms. Verschoren, the Commissioner's office just testified, just to be clear, that there are 24 conflicts of interest. You did, not 2. So, but I want to go back to my question on how you were appointed. You said that you didn't apply, that the Liberal Minister of Industry approached you and you had 2 conversations with him to do that. But we also have testimony here from the Liberal Minister of Industry who said he was given a list from the Privy Council office, and that's who he contacted. And the Privy Council office, head of appointments, who was in place when you were appointed, said that she supplied 6 names to Minister Baines on that. And when asked if anyone had ever been appointed without being on that list, she said, no, not that she was aware of. So, but you didn't apply. So I have no idea how you would have got on the list that Minister Baines then went and checked out. So who misled the committee? Minister Baines and the Prime Minister's Department, the PCO, on appointments, and saying that you applied, or you, and saying you never applied?
Mr. Chair, I believe the situation was that there was indications that I was requested to consider to be an applicant to this. I'm sure that the Privy Council office would have looked at a number of applicants. I would expect.
Okay. Ma'am, let's move to a different question. In your opening statement, you said repeatedly that the Ethics Commissioner said you acted in good faith. So are those your words or his? Because I looked through his report. I read it before, and I trust you did too. It says good faith in there one time, but it's not in this report talking about you being found guilty of this corruption. But it's not, that good faith phrase isn't about you. So why would you make that up? Why would you assert that in your opening statement today? He didn't say you were acting in good faith.
Mr. Chair, we just heard from the Commissioner, and I accept his findings.
Okay. So, ma'am, if you accept his findings, you'll recognize that in his findings, he didn't say that you acted in good faith. How many Canadian tax dollars were given out in conflicts of interest by Liberal-appointed board members at Sustainable Development Technologies Canada? How much money? Just the number would be helpful.
The total amount of money?
Yeah, the Auditor General pegged the number at $330 million given out in conflicts of interest. Do you dispute that number?
The Auditor General stated that number. It's obvious that that is accurate.
So you agree? So, ma'am, are you proud of your time at Justin Trudeau's Green Slush Fund? It's a yes or no question.
The investments that STTC made into the clean tech industry has had an enormous impact on
proud?
Canada. I'm very proud of the work that STTC has done, yes.
Are you proud of the $300 million given out in conflicts of interest? Are you proud of the 24 instances of your own conflicts of interest? Are you proud that you used your position to help enrich yourself and your friends?
Again, I accept the Commissioner's findings. I recognize that there were 2 things that I could have been approved on in terms of that designation of recusing versus abstaining.
Okay, so I've got about 30 seconds left. I've got to say I'm not sure what's worse, that you didn't report the governance issues and demand change as chair of the board, or that it seems like you don't really think that you did anything wrong. So I have one question to finish my time. When will you return the money that you took from the Green Slush Fund?
Write the check.
Mr. Chair, I've been accountable and people in public service in these positions need to be accountable. And I have been involved with 4 different reports. I have made myself available. None of these experts come to that conclusion. And again, the other major issue is that those investments were made in projects in Canada that really has grown the economy.
Problem with that, Mr. Généreux, the floor is yours. Now, Ms. Verschoen, the Commissioner determined that you were guilty when it came on 24 occasions, in fact. Now, if I benefited from the money invested by others, I would know right off the bat that I was doing something that was improper. How is it that with all of your vast experience that you were not aware that you were acting improperly? Now, you stated earlier that you spoke to the Ethics Commissioner before your companies received that money. Why did you actually accept the position in the first place then?
Mr. Chair, in terms of your question on recognizing that there were conflicts, I established that that this was something that I could contribute to in terms of being the chair of SDTC. I had an interest to promote this clean tech sector, and of the 24 conflicts, 20 of them was the fact that I abstained as opposed to left the room. I want to make it very clear.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but listen, I was a mayor of a city, La Côtière, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I was a provider to the city before I ran to be mayor, and I knew that when I became mayor, I'd no longer have access to contracts or money from the municipality. They are core governance rules at play there. So how is it that on 24 occasions you didn't have that knee-jerk reaction, i.e. that that you should not only not be at the meeting, but you should recuse yourself and not be actually in the meeting room? Honestly, it's a bit hard to fathom. How is it that you didn't realize, given your wealth of experience, that you didn't think that through and say to yourself, I absolutely must not be here. I cannot take any decision that might benefit my company. How is it that that never crossed your mind?
Mr. Chair, it certainly crossed my mind and that's why I declared these when there was a perceived conflict. And these are all perceived conflicts that we're talking about here. So it was really important for me to recognize that, and I felt I followed the procedures that I thought were correct.
Sorry to cut you off, but I said to you earlier that you had a counsel who gave you advice to ensure that you wouldn't be in a position of conflict of interest. And apparently it's that legal counsel's fault, or those lawyers, I don't know if there are a number of them, but it was their fault because they misled you. But let me repeat what I said earlier. Now, I know what it means to be in a position like you. You're a smart woman, Ms. Verschoen. How is it possible that it didn't cross your mind? You didn't realize I've been on a number of boards, including the Port of Quebec City, where I was also a provider prior to that, or a supplier rather. And I completely stepped aside when I sat on the board because I knew I no longer was entitled to those contracts. So how is it? I can't fathom how you didn't realise that you had no business being there.
Mr. Chair, when I got on the board of STDC, I clearly disclosed to the minister, to the ISED people, to management, that I had a declaration that happened 18 months prior to me getting on that board. That is the only real conflict that I've had over the whole term of my chairmanship.
Ms. Visharan, I have some questions, particularly about NR Store, which you are the founder and still owner and chair of the board of, I believe. You've been involved in projects, in particular with NR Store and Hydro Store and Oneida. That project received last year, I believe, $50 million from Canada's Natural Resources Department. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that project received $170 million from Canada's Infrastructure Bank?
That is correct.
And Andre Lise Matot, the director who served on the board with you, Cycle Capital, but served on the board with you at the Green Slush Fund, she was moved over and appointed by the Liberals to the Infrastructure Bank when that money was finally approved. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You're the chair of MARS in Toronto, which I believe gets about a third of its financing from the industry department. Is that correct?
Yeah, MARS is a non-for-profit organization that does receive money from the federal government and provincial government.
It's about a third of your budget. Has MARS, and you chair that, has MARS given NR Store and its project with Oneida Hydro Star any money, taxpayer money?
I do not believe that MARS gave NR Store and Hydro Store any taxpayer money.
So you have not benefited, the companies that you own have not received any money whatsoever from, or the ones that are associated with the projects like Oneida have not received any money from MARS, which is funded a third by the federal government.
That's correct.
Okay. So if I've got the number correctly, that's you got $170 million from the Infrastructure Bank, $50 million from Natural Resources Canada. That's a lot of money. Outside of that, it appears to be very profitable to be connected with these Liberals and be on the SDTC board and to do their bidding so that other Liberals can get money. And then in return, in other government organizations, your projects got money. It's a lot of taxpayer money.
I'm not sure there was a question there, Mr. Perkins, but that's all the time you had. Thank you. Mr. Turnbull, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So, Ms. Verschuren, thanks for being here today. So you have said multiple times that you followed correct procedures, and you've also said you accept the Ethics Commissioner's report and the Auditor General's report and findings, and that you, in fact, abstained from votes where you should have recused yourself. Do you regret not having recused yourself?
Mr. Chair, yes. If to do it over again, I would have absolutely recused myself. I just was not aware that the difference between abstaining and recusing.
Can I now ask you, you have been appointed, I have a list here of quite a number of appointments that you've had over the years, going all the way back to 1987, where you were appointed by Brian Mulrooney to the National Advisory Board on Science and Technology. When you were on that National Advisory Board, did you declare conflicts of interest, and did you abstain versus recuse yourself in situations during those regular board practices?
Mr. Chair, that advisory board was chaired by the Prime Minister. And the objective of that board was to work with the Americans' counterparts, an equivalent number of people, to bring and develop science and technology in both of our countries. So there weren't decisions made, other than advice being given to both governments.
So I'll get that. So there were no funding decisions made. But so you didn't have to abstain or recuse yourself from anything because there was no votes taken, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then what about when Stephen Harper appointed you to the North American Competitiveness Council? So I know that was another appointment you received. Did you, in the regular practices of that council, have to abstain or recuse yourself in any situations? And did you declare conflicts of interest, perceived or real, that occurred in any of the council's undertakings?
Mr. Chair, bit of a similar circumstance with the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. He asked me and a number of other Canadian leaders to join him in Mexico and work with him to open trade barriers between our three countries.
Okay, great. So, and I note that you were appointed by Jim Flaherty to the Economic Advisory Council, appointed by Jim Flaherty again to the Venture Capital Expert Panel, and then again by Jim Flaherty in, I think this is 2014, the Venture Capital Expert Panel. So I assume all of those were panels and advisory and were not making funding decisions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and were you ever accused of being a conservative insider for your appointments and your service on any of those advisory panels or councils?
No.
Okay, and I know that my colleague had already mentioned that you have donated quite a number of times to the Conservative Party. So what I'm taking issue with, like, I think you have, at least to some degree, taken, you've owned up to the mistakes you've made and expressed, that you regret that you didn't recuse yourself when you should have. I mean, I would say you ought to have known. I believe you ought to have known that you should have recused yourself because that's in the conflict of interest code that you were supposed to abide by. So in essence, you are responsible as the board chair, and I think you've expressed some regret. But what I take issue with is the Conservatives calling you a liberal insider, which I don't believe is the truth. I believe that you've shown yourself to donate to the Conservative Party and have been appointed for many, many years and served under quite a number of Conservative leaders in this country. So, but what I wanted to ask you is that you donated $1,675 to the Jean Charest leadership campaign, as did Mr. Perkins on this committee. And I wanted to ask you whether you thought you were as much a conservative as Mr. Perkins and or as liberal as him.
Mr. Chair, I've never been associated with any party. The public offices that I've held and the responsibility that I held during my career really. I made the decision never to be associated with a party, and so I leave it at that.
Thank you.